Hey everybody, it's Cody here. Before this episode gets going, I just want to let you know it was recorded on location at my brother's house. So you might hear at certain points of the background kids screaming and dogs barking. That's just something we couldn't really work around. Also, no Garth this time. For all you Garth heads, he'll be back next time. So enjoy.
Through a crooked cellar door, down a spindly staircase, there's cobwebs and black cats galore, a tired cliche haunted thing. And maybe if these walls could talk, they might even have a word or two.
Hello, and welcome to the Least Haunted Podcast, a place where skepticism, science, anthropology, and humor meet to discuss all things paranormal, spectral, spooky, haunted, and sometimes just the plain stupid. I am your host, Cody Franks, and joining me today via eldritch, horrible, dark magic, I have been able to summon a special co-host for the day. Please introduce yourself, you Denzian of hell, you.
Hi, my name's Gunnar Franks, and I am the brother of this mastermind here.
Nothing is more horrifying and terrifying than a younger sibling, and I think my younger brother here is going to prove that. So this is my younger brother, Gunnar, and where are we currently right now?
We're currently located at my not-so-haunted home in El Paso, Texas.
El Paso, which is just next to hell, right?
Hell Paso.
Hell Paso, as they call it. I'm coming to see that name is very apt. I've been here in the summertime, where it was so hot that a Coca-Cola exploded like a grenade in the backseat of my car. And right now we're here on New Year's Day, 2020. Happy New Year's, everybody. Where it is so ungodly cold at even 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. in the afternoon. Yeah, you just don't even want to go outside. So this place is just miserable all the time. Speaking of miserable, let's talk about our childhood.
Oh, where do you want to begin? Because there's
Okay.
so much.
Well, I kind of have a formula that I follow on this show with my usual co-host. So I'll start off with the big question. Gunnar, do you believe in ghosts?
I wish I could say no. I definitely believe in ghosts.
And you've experienced, we're going to talk about today, experiences that both of us have had and shared. We've both been present for some of these. And the audience has probably gathered from a few of our past episodes. I don't think we're very far in. But you will have undoubtedly gathered that I am mostly a skeptic. By training, I am an anthropologist. That is what my degree is in. So I do not want to degrade or doubt people who do believe, because that is part of their worldview. However, me personally, I think there's explanations for most of these things, even though, as we will again discuss coming up, I have experienced things that are beyond the realms of what one might consider normal. I'm just going to go out and say it. Gunnar and I grew up in what most people would describe as a haunted house.
Haunted house, I mean, there's other, terms like old house too, I think, is a term you can use for a haunted house.
Yeah, as we discussed way back in episode 1, the terrifyingly stupid tale of Jeff the Mongoose, my home, or our home that we grew up in, was built in the 1930s by our grandfather and our great-grandfather on property that our family has been living on since 1885?
No, 1888. So our great-grandfather staked the land in 1886, sailed back to Denmark, picked up his wife and mother-in-law, and his wife was pregnant at the time, then sailed to the east coast of the United States and hoofed it to our land in 1888 and started building.
Yeah, see, I always thought I was like more of the historian, but Gunnar, can I say that you're in the military?
Yeah.
We won't give ranks or any stuff that might get you in trouble.
That won't get me in trouble either.
Okay. Well, Gunnar
I don't give any secret launch codes, stuff like that.
What are the codes?
Could you tell me where the nuclear vessels are?
Gunnar was stationed in Germany about a year ago, 2 years ago?
It's almost been 3 years ago now. I moved over there in 2014, later half, and then I moved back here about mid-2017.
And that's where my nephew, Gunnar's son, was born. But while he was there, Gunnar, did you actually make it to our ancestral home?
No, I wanted to. So our ancestral home is Augustenburg, Denmark. It's like a little bit larger now, but it was essentially just like a fishing village. Like it's coastal. Like what's opposite of a peninsula?
A bay?
There we go. Yeah.
A cove?
Yeah. Yeah. I never made it. I wanted to. I was planning it for a long time. We just so much training, we just never got around to it.
So yeah, our great grandfather was a Danish sea captain who settled, as Gunnar just mentioned, our new family home in the 1880s.
That's got to be that's painstakingly tough right there. One, he sailed from Denmark to Northern California, hoofed it from basically San Francisco Bay down to the Santa Cruz Mountains, staked the land, hoofed it back, sailed all the way back to Denmark, picked up his pregnant wife and his mother-in-law, sailed all the way to the East Coast. The only reason we know he sailed to the East Coast that time was because our great-grandfather was actually born in Illinois. He's got 2 birth certificates. We got the one which was labeled based on him being born in Illinois, and the second one which was actually dated from around our grandfather's birth, which he had to get a new birth certificate. But yeah, we only know that because he was born in Illinois on the way. So then they hoofed it the rest of the way with a newborn babe.
Yeah. I mean, they were a little late to the game, but that's what, a lot of people did. Oregon Trail.
Just wild. That's just wild to me.
Yeah. But I'm sure it was easier than sailing around the Horn again.
Yeah.
Because, the Panama Canal didn't exist yet. So anyway, Danish sea captain, homesteads 100 acres in the rugged, rural Santa Cruz Mountains. This is a time when grizzly bears still stalked the hills. I think we're one of 5 or 6 oldest families in the Santa Cruz Mountains. We've been there 5 generations. And so that's a lot of time in one spot for spooky things to kind of coalesce and be attracted. Also, that in that time, 2 highways were built on either side of our property that fenced us in, one of which, California Highway 17, holds the distinction of being one of the deadliest roads in California.
It's in the top 5.
And we actually live right below what is known colloquially as Valley Surprise, which happens to be the deadliest. It's the dead man's curve of Highway 17. Up until the early 1980s, there were no guardrails or center dividers on this highway. The result being that the top half of our property is littered with wrecked cars where people came flying off the highway. A few died on site. So,
the cars are still there, too?
Yeah, the cars are still there because it was just too much of a hassle, I guess, to haul it out. But not too much of a hassle for our father and grandfather to pirate parts from all these. Actually, don't worry, they got the people in them out of there. That was all taken care of. It's not like they ignored them.
The engine in the Mustang, the 68 Mustang, actually came out of a 73 Mercury Cougar that went over the edge.
Oh, it's a death car.
It's a
death car.
It's part death car.
The undead car. As we're kind of establishing here, our childhood home, haunted? It's hard to say.
I mean, I'll admit, I believe in ghosts, but I do also believe that there could possibly be scientific explanations. Are they actually ghosts of like dead people? Maybe, maybe not.
As I've previously, again, refer back to episode 1, mentioned, the house has no foundation. I mean, it's on pier blocks. That's what kind of filled in for foundation when it was built. And in the 1989 earthquake, it was kind of bounced askew. So the result is that the entire house kind of slopes down one way. So when I was a kid and I would notice the hallway door seemingly close on its own volition, when I was a kid, that was definitely a ghost. But now, I think maybe it's just that the house was leaning and gravity.
It was a fun house to own rollerblades in.
Yeah, you could start at one end and just kind of coast down to the other side. But yeah, there were certain things that happened there that kind of defy some explanation. I mean, on the surface. For example, Gunnar and I shared a bedroom until I was 12.
Yeah, dibs on top bunk.
Well, for a while we didn't even have the bunk bed. We actually shared a bed. And I remember one time that I was very sick. I had a fever and I was lying in bed and Gunnar walked into the room, walked up to the bed, lifted the cover, but then crawled under the bed. And I was like, Gunnar, what are you doing? And then Gunnar walked back into the room.
Because me and our older sister Jessie were actually in the living room, which was right next to our bedroom at the time, watching TV, and I wasn't even in there.
People at home are probably getting the creeps like, oh my god, well then what was mimicking your brother? What crawled under the bed? The answer, my friends, is 102 fever. That's what was going on. I mean, another time I had a fever and I was hallucinating a Viet Cong soldier jumping up and down on my bed, pointing a gun at me. But again, fever dreams, crazy, not ghosts. I mean, unless you believe
the best time for a ghost to check you out because he's like, I'll just chalk up the fever dream.
Yeah, I guess.
Now, why a Viet Cong soldier? I don't know.
I think that one might say that maybe evil spirits gave me the fever. I mean, if you're ascribed to that type of medical theory that it's all vapors and evil spirits and miasmas that are making you sick, but it doesn't change the fact that I once witnessed what appeared to be my younger brother crawl under the bed before my younger brother walked into the room. Kind of creepy.
They say bottom bunk is always the best bunk. Now there's no more bottom you can go other than under the bed.
Under the bed. That's where the monsters live, man. Maybe Fred Savage was down there and Howie Mandel.
Bogey Man.
Maybe it was Little Monsters situation.
That movie terrified me growing up.
Little Monsters is a terrible, terrible film. It's mean-spirited. It is just
And it
awful.
wasn't so much Howie Mandel that scared me. It was the main bad guy, that little child ghoul. That little...
little Children of the Corn vibe going on.
It was like Children of the Corn meets AC/DC, like with little schoolboy.
Angus Young.
Angus Young.
Angus Young by way of He Who Walks Behind the Rose.
Malachi Young.
Also, at one point, they piss in a bottle and trick a kid into drinking the piss, and it's played for laughs.
Well, I mean, we kind of did something like along those lines at our friend's house, in their tree house. We were at in the tree house, and we were playing like squirt gun fights, and they talked me into peeing in a bucket to fill one of the squirt guns up with pee, and spray it at the other kids.
That is haunting and chilling in its own way. Nobody wants to get sprayed with piss. Gunnar, what's some situations that you experienced in the house?
Let's see. Of course, there was the time, when you saw me come in there, and we always had the pipe smoke. Was that from Pop Pop, or was that from? I was really young. Obviously, I never met Pop Pop, and then
but he never was in that house. That's our mom's grandfather.
But I don't know who the pipe smoke was from.
Could have been
one of our grandparents or something like that.
Great grandfather smoked,
and
what he's talking about?
Just a lingering pipe smoke that it wasn't always there. It was just like every now and then.
Yeah, you'd be walking down the hallway and you would walk through. You couldn't see a visible cloud, but it would be like walking through a cloud of cigar or pipe smoke, and you could smell it. Mm-hmm. But that could also just be smells of an old house.
Old house farts.
Old house farts.
Maybe tobacco wood. Is that a thing?
Tobacco wood. They built the house entirely out of old cigar boxes, which was weird because they owned a sawmill and there were redwood trees everywhere.
Yeah, isn't cedar wood, right? Is cigar boxes?
Cigar boxes, maybe cedar. It keeps the moths away. Mm-hmm. One thing that happened when I was a teenager, whenever my parents would go out of town, as you do when you're a teenager, you have friends and kind of a party over. So I think it was 4th of July. And I had some friends over, and we went on the back patio, and I had some fireworks, fountains, little fountains, nothing big, that we had saved from a cross-country trip years before. And we were doing some mushrooms. Some people were out of their mind. And my buddy, he starts freaking out because he looked back at the house, and he swears an old woman was staring at him through the window.
But I guess you could count that to the mushrooms.
That could have been the mushrooms. But in cultures all over the world, you take psychedelics to open your mind and go on these spiritual vision quests. And one of our great grandmothers, the aforementioned mother-in-law that was mentioned in the earlier story, did die somewhere on the property.
Yeah.
And might actually be buried somewhere on the property. Now, our great-grandfather, he put in his diary that he took her to the bottom of the canyon and put her on the train to ship her up by San Francisco to Colma, the big necropolis there where they bury all their dead, to be buried. So officially she's buried there, but I think that or it was always my grandfather's belief that he simply just said and told his wife that he sent her mom up on the train to get buried there, which is kind of suspicious. Like, why wouldn't the whole family go for a burial?
Because, I mean, you gotta think about it, too. You got an old world Danish family.
Yeah.
That, like, you know, the ways that they would do it, you know, it's like, well, if we got our own plot of land or anything where we, you know, would bury our family.
Yeah, you'd have, we have the family pet cemetery.
Yeah. Lots of pets.
Lots of pets.
Well, sometimes that is better.
Animal ghosts. That's not...
Well, didn't you have a sweetheart ghost experience, didn't you?
I was probably 8. So my dog was murdered by a vengeful tenant of my father's who was renting a house from us on the property, who was a crazy tweaker, methed out of his mind. And for some reason he was, most likely meth was being the reason, was mad at my dad, and he figured the best way to get revenge would be to poison my dog. And it just so happened to be on my 8th birthday that my dog was poisoned. And sometime after, I was convinced that I saw the dog running around on our front lawn. But again, little kid, overactive imagination, distraught. My dog was killed on my birthday. So maybe I was just seeing what I wanted to see.
And now, it's also crazy because I wouldn't necessarily say just the house that's haunted, but also, like, the land itself. Because, I mean, Jesse had a lot of experiences with the trailer.
Yeah, and I later lived in that house, the trailer. So
babies crying, little girls,
and I did hear that.
Giggling.
So our older sister, at one point, as most teenage girls in the mid '90s would do, got into Wicca and the craft, way into the craft. So she started doing stuff, and at this point, she had moved out of the main house into a smaller.
It was like a trailer where we had converted part of it into, like, a house, like, living area.
Yeah, it was
attached to the trailer.
It used to be a standard practice to get yourself an old mobile home, like a 40-foot, 50-foot trailer, and then build a real room onto it.
I guess the key is eventually you keep building, and then you take the trailer out, and you build more house, and you have a regular house? I don't know.
So anyway, she lived in this house on the property across the yard, and we had a party line for our telephone, and I'm sure some of our listeners might be aware of what this is. It's an older thing where several different houses would be on the same phone number. So at this point, I was the room that I was in. I finally got my own room, no longer bunking with Gunner. I moved into Jesse's old room because we were like hermit crabs. You just move into the next bigger shell. And for some reason, that bedroom had the telephone in it. I have no idea why. And I was woken up one night, probably around 2 a.m, by the phone ringing. And when I answered it, our sister was on the phone and she was freaking out. And she said, there's a baby crying on my porch. Through the phone line, I could hear what sound like crying and wailing of possibly a small child. And then our grandmother, who lived in another house on the property, also then got on the party line because she heard the phone ring. And she heard the same thing through the phone line, this what could be a baby crying. And for years, I thought that's what it was until I heard a coyote. And we do live in a place where I have seen coyotes run through the yard before. We have coyotes. I now believe that that sound was a coyote. Why it was on her porch, that's a little odd.
I think what also kind of gave us more belief that it was possibly a baby was those crazy lady letters that we found underneath that drawer in the trailer.
Yeah, so while kind of going through this house that she was living in, we removed a drawer in the hallway and found where a previous tenant, like some 25 years earlier, had some kind of mental breakdown in the house and had written these insane letters about... Crazy lady letters. Well, one was about giants and other creatures and entities that were coming to her.
And one was about her baby.
And her baby. So, I mean, that ticks off all the boxes for somebody that's like, oh yeah, that place is haunted. You got yourself a demon. That's a demon is what you got there. Jesse also would talk about something that would, an unseen force that she said was a small child that would jump on her bed and wake her up at night, jumping up and down on the bed. One time, actually, this is interesting, after she had moved out and the house sat empty for a while. Gunnar, you were probably 10?
So I was probably it was probably when me and Mom were living in either the Santa Cruz house, hotels, or Lake County.
Yeah, so our parents had divorced, and Jesse and I stayed with our dad, and Gunnar went with our mom. None of this was our choice, by the way. And he was visiting, and I found him in the yard just crying. You were like distraught and very upset. And being the older brother, I'm like, hey, like, what's wrong? What's going on? I'm thinking it's something about the divorce that's upsetting him. And I remember Gunnar says, the little girl is sad. And I said, what little girl? And he says, the little girl in Jesse's house is looking at me through the window, and she is sad and she is crying. Right?
Yeah, and it's crazy too, though, because like I sleepwalk and I sleep talk. I think it's both of us when we sleepwalk, like, it's like a sleep trek. Like, there's been times where I've woken up in my bed with, like, dirt on my feet because I've gone outside. Like,
I used to, when I was a little kid, when I was, like, 2, my parents would say that they would find me in the morning outside, that I had gotten up in the middle of the night and found a way outside and wandered around. Now, for a parent who lives in rural mountains where there are mountain lions and the aforementioned coyotes, your 2-year-old somehow escaping the house at night and wandering around is also terrifying. I haven't had anything like that happen to me in decades, but I do remember being really freaked out many times sharing a room with Gunnar when we were kids, because he would just start talking in his sleep and have whole conversations with somebody who wasn't there. Mm-hmm. Again, haunted? I don't know. But we digress. The point is, you saw this little girl, mm-hmm. you were crying, but you're saying it could have been like a sleep thing?
I mean, it could have been, because, like, you know.
But I think I know what it actually was.
Was it the big eye girl?
Yes. So, when our sister moved into this other house, it was roughly around the time that our maternal great-grandmother was moving, and had given our sister a whole bunch of furniture to kind of start her life with. And one of the things that she gave was a print of a keen waif. And I don't know if listeners are familiar with what a keen waif is.
They did a movie not too long ago.
They did do a movie recently. There was this artist in the 70s named Keen. He claimed that it turned out he was his wife. Spoiler alert, his wife was doing it all. He was painting these pictures of small children with, like, ridiculously large, today we'd call it anime eyes. Huge eyes.
Anime eyes. Alita eyes.
Yeah, battle angel eyes.
The eyes are the windows of the soul.
That's why I paint them so big. I've always done it that way.
And one of the pictures that our great-grandmother had collected from this period was a little blonde girl in a blue dress with big eyes and in tears.
Going down an alleyway.
Crying, walking down an alleyway. So, I believe what might have happened is that...
So, I mean, I remember the way it was set up was, so there's the back window, and it was to the right of the back window. And then that was in alignment with the entryway into the living room, and then that front window of the trailer.
Yeah. So it's possible that... and the house was sitting abandoned and empty. My sister wasn't living there. Nobody had lived there for about better part of a year and a half at that point. And it might have been that you just walked by and the lighting was right, that you saw this picture of this girl, and that's the crying girl you saw. That all sounds very plausible. Now, I gotta let the listeners know, when I was 18, I moved into that house. It seemed to be like the tradition. They're like, okay, you're out. And so I moved across the yard in this house, and it was still completely furnished with, like, all of my sister's old things, including that picture, which I left up. It used to freak out my friends when they'd come over. But, yeah, I stayed in that house, and for the first few nights I stayed in that house, I was terrified. Because it was like, I didn't move in there necessarily by choice. It was kind of like kick the bird out of the nest syndrome. And so I moved over there, and I remember I couldn't stay in the bedroom because the bedroom that had been built onto this trailer house...
That bedroom was terrifying.
Well, the bedroom the ceiling had collapsed because the previous winter a big redwood limb had fallen on it and cracked it, and so water had leaked in. The whole thing was collapsed. So there was just like one room in the house, like, oh yeah, you don't go in that room because that room is mostly outside.
That's nature's room. That's God's room.
That's God's room now. You don't go there. So the bed was set up in the living room. The living room has these giant windows, no curtains, and so it's just like a really bizarre place. So the first few nights I slept in there, I kept the TV on all night and was just like did not sleep well, and then eventually I just kind of got used to it, like, oh, well, this is my place now.
Were the goats still around then? Too?
Oh, yeah. So, that's actually... So, this house ended up getting a nickname. We called it Spooky House, because it was fucking spooky.
Fucking spooky.
One wall of the house, we had pygmy goats at this time, close to a dozen pygmy goats. That's its own story about the pygmy goats, the whole goat saga. But the enclosure the pygmy goats were in was next to Spooky House, and one wall of Spooky House provided the fourth wall for the goat enclosure. So you had 3 fenced off sides in the house, and the goats would rub up against the house, because anybody who has goats, they actually like to rub up on things. It feels good. It scratches their heads. They are the cats of the Ovid world.
Of the clothed world.
And another thing is that everybody, you think of, sheeps go ba, goats go ba, but goats don't really go ba.
Like, nah.
Or like a... Because a couple of these goats at this point were like... These goats were like 15 years old, so they were elderly goats that would rub up at the house and go... So when I would have friends over, we'd be sitting in the living room getting stoned, and they wouldn't know about the goats. And I would tell them, oh yeah, this place is haunted. This is the Spooky House. Welcome to Spooky House. And then you would hear like... boom! As this goat would slam against the side of the house, and these people would lose their minds. Hilarious.
Definitely a spooky house, though.
Oh, yeah. Well, so during the time when it was empty, before I moved in there, I knew that my sister had some photo albums that were in the house and at the one part of the trailer end. So, like, you got to picture this house is, you enter through the main door, and you're in, like, a kind of dining room. And if you look to your left, it's like a 50-foot hallway, because it's a mobile home. And then if you go straight forward, you go into this, like, living room that's been tacked on. So I knew in the back part of the trailer half of the house, she had some photo albums, and I was doing a school project. I needed some pictures of me when I was younger, and I knew there was some in there. And so I went over and didn't bother turning on... Well, the light switch was further down the hallway, so for the first bit of it, I was in darkness. And I was walking down this hallway.
That's a horrible design flaw, especially on the spooky spectrum.
Yeah. So I'm walking down this hallway, and I'm kind of staring down. I'm already, at this point, I'm still like a hardcore believer and freaked out. Because this is the house where the baby cried. This is the house where the girl was jumping on the bed, or the ghost was jumping on the bed. I'm keeping my head down, and I look up into the hallway, and there's just a ball of light. Just a ball of light kind of hovering in the middle of the hallway. And I was like, nope. Turned around, ran out. Right? Now, I gotta point out that I suffer from migraines. That's a thing that I've had ever since I was a kid. And one of the things that happens when I'm about to get a migraine is I see flashes of light and balls of light. And I can't remember if I had a migraine after this happened, but I'm just gonna say there was no ball of light. It was just an aura or a flash that was signaling the impending pain of a headache that was coming on. Now that I think it also... We're not even talking about our main house. Now it's all about Spooky House.
Spooky House.
Welcome to the Spooky House show. Before I moved in and it was sitting empty, we used to hang out in there and get stoned with my friends because it was a convenient place to hang out after school. And that's when we found my sister's old Ouija board. And we started playing with the Ouija board in the Spooky House.
That there Ouija board.
Ouija board. The devil board from Hasbro. The devil's at Hasbro. We'll talk about this, the Ouija board and Spooky House, and we're going to get to some more of our other stories of growing up in a haunted house. But first, it's time for the ad break. We got to acknowledge our sponsors. All right. So back to the show. Ouija board in Spooky House, right? So that became a kind of for a short time, that was a regular afternoon thing. My friends would get into Spooky House, get really high, and pull out the Ouija board and, make believe that there was something there with us, some kind of presence. The only thing that ever I could say was kind of interesting was that our buddy was not touching. He wasn't touching the planchette. He was just watching us. And he was adopted. And so we asked it what his real name was. He never told us this. And the thing spelt out his name, first, middle, and last, his birth name. And he got really freaked out. But here's the thing, is like, he could be bullshitting us. Like, they could just say that was his name. We don't know that
was his real last name.
We don't know if that was his birth name. He could just be bullshitting. The other thing is that, like, look, Ouija boards, we'll do a whole episode on Ouija boards at some point in the future. Totally bunk. Totally bunk. That is you pushing that thing, my friend. If enough people are touching something lightly enough, you don't need to push it hard because you're all sharing in the burden. Yeah.
Yeah. So back to regular house.
Oh yeah, the big house.
So to the big house.
This is called the big house.
So because I never got a chance to live in Spooky House because I moved to Korea when I came of age to live in Spooky House.
You escaped to the army.
Yeah, but now I never saw it personally. But I want to talk about Red Eyes.
Oh, Red Eyes.
Red Eyes. So because I just remember. So you were in our bedroom, which again was directly next to the main living room we were using at the time. Our mother, our sister, our dog Molly, who was a Dalmatian, and I were all in the living room watching movies and stuff. And I think I dozed off, but I just woke up to like horrible like screaming, the dog barking and growling at. We had a big sliding glass door that went into that room. I didn't see it. Like I said, I woke up and then our sister and mom were horrified and screaming and kind of like backing away. The dog was barking and growling at the door, and then Cody had come running in.
Yeah. So what they said was that they for complicated reasons. They were sleeping in the living room when my dad was sleeping in the house. They were going through a separation. So you start out by staying in different parts of the house, and then you move to different houses, and then eventually get a divorce. That's just how it goes. But they woke up, not sure which one woke up first, but one woke up and then woke up the other. And they said that there was a pair of red glowing eyes staring at them through the sliding glass.
And from
door.
like towards the top of the sliding glass, so like whatever they saw might have been tall or
tall.
My buddy, I told him the story and he freaked me out because he's like, what if it was tall, or what if it was hanging off the roof looking in? And that really puckered me up.
Taking the old sphincter. I'm gonna blow the lid right off this thing.
Don't say barn owl.
No, that's the Mothman. The Mothman was a barn owl. Or a screech owl. That's a whole nother episode. We'll get into the Mothman. But no, here's the thing. It's a sliding glass door, double paned. You got two panes separated by about half an inch. So now you have two reflective surfaces right next to each other. So one light or one glowing thing might appear as two glowing things.
So it is a one-eyed red-eyed monster.
one-eyed, red-eyed people eater. No, what else was in this living room was a state-of-the-art for 1993. I mean, this was 99 or 2000 by this point, but when we got it, state-of-the-art.
A CD player?
CD player with a little red light on it that would notify you that it was off, which is counterintuitive, right? Yeah. Why do you have a light to let me know the thing is off? The light lets me know it's on.
It does turn green, though, when you turn it on.
Okay, so if it had been on, it would have been a green-eyed monster standing through the window. But here's what's going on, is they were low to the ground, looking up. The angle of the reflected red light from the CD player on the double panes of glass split it into two lights. And that's why when you turned on the lights in the room,
it was gone.
The red eyes were gone. That's what the red-eyed monster was. Now, although, another time we were playing with that Ouija board, something identifying itself as Red Eyes, it claimed to be called Red Eyes, showed up in the Ouija board, and then that same friend who had his real name revealed, he claimed it followed him home and that he was seeing red eyes for a while. But that also could have been the drugs.
Yeah. I also remember our dad running into the room and then said, I'll take care of this, and ran outside with a hammer. Now, granted, okay, there wasn't a red-eyed monster, it was a reflection. But had there been a red-eyed monster? Like, you take that thing out with a hammer?
Oh, yeah. You can bash something real good with a hammer. Well, if the hammer's made out of iron or steel, that works against the supernatural. Now, that's old folk.
They're allergic to iron.
They're allergic to iron. That is a thing. That's a fact.
Allergy. Ghosts
and evil spirits are allergic to iron. You can beat them real good with a hammer.
I'd hammer out danger. I'd hammer out a warning.
Did you want to touch on your experience or our experience in Scotland?
Yeah, it's off the realm of...
It's still us growing up, though.
It's us growing up and having weird supernatural experiences. So, in the year 1999. Our family took a trip to Scotland. Our older sister and myself both have cystic fibrosis, and which until very recently that's a death sentence. In fact, actually, we did lose our sister in 2009 to the disease. She passed away, but in 1999 she was eligible for Make-A-Wish, and she wanted to go to Ireland. But Make-A-Wish said that was kind of problematic because they were having some troubles at that time, a little flare up. So the next best thing was Scotland. So we got like a 2-week, all expense paid family trip to Scotland, a road tour of Scotland. We just drove around.
Which we got to bring our cousin.
And we got to bring our cousin because our cousin practically lived with us at the time. He was like our adopted sibling. So we're in Scotland, and this is at the same place where you got knighted, I believe. Yeah,
in Dingwall.
The town of Dingwall, Scotland, at Tulloch Castle. We get to this castle, we get settled in, we're all in separate rooms. Gunner's sharing a room with Jesse, our parents have their own room, and I'm sharing a room with our teenage cousin. We go into the room, he quickly passes out. He's asleep, he's out. I am laying diagonally across my bed, and this is important that I say diagonally because I never laid down in the bed with my head on the pillow, and that factors in a bit. So I'm laying across, playing my Game Boy. I think I'm playing Pokemon.
Probably.
Gotta catch them all. And also watching, they were like a season or two behind us on Friends.
It was new to them.
It was new to them. So they were like having a whole thing like, oh my God, Ross is getting married or whatever. I'm like, yeah, I know how this plays out. And I'm sitting there playing my Game Boy, and first I hear from the bathroom groaning noises, which immediately kind of makes me weirded out. But again, old building, old pipes. That's just...
I mean, I feel like Scotland has a better credibility of being haunted than,
Yeah, they probably do. So I hear the groaning noises come from the bathroom. That starts to freak me out. Also, how old was I then? 99.
99. I was 9 years old, so you were...
12 going on 13. Yeah. 12 going on 13. I hear the noises, and then something grabs my foot. Like, I feel like a firm pressure on my heel. At this point, I start trying to wake up my cousin quietly, and I'm calling over to him. I'm saying his name, trying to wake him up, but he's out. And then the pressure happens again on my foot, and I figure, you know what? He's on his own. He's not waking up. He's dead. He's dead.
Ditched him.
Yeah, the ghost can have him. I bolt out of that room and just don't look back. I ran down the hall, and I'm away and gone. I'm banging on my parents' room, and they come out. Let's say what's wrong. I'm like, oh, there's something in our room. And they're like, yeah, that something's your cousin. It's like, no, there's something in our room. At this point, our cousin's kind of awake, and he comes stumbling out and is like, what's going on? And I refuse to go back into the room. I'm like, no, I'm not going to sleep in that room. I'm sleeping in somebody else's room tonight. And my sister gets all excited about this because she's like, all right,
hell
ghost,
yeah.
Hell yeah. She's not gonna sleep in that room though.
Ghost, the craft, I'm in.
Yeah. Ooh, this is what I was training for.
Okay, I have a plan.
She somehow talks our dad. They're gonna go into the room and turn off the lights and snap some photographs.
Polaroid was big.
Polaroid. Bravely, we all kind of go in as a group, and I strip the bedding off the bed because I'm gonna need bedding to sleep in somebody else's room. So we take the bedding off of the bed that I was on. So that bed's stripped down. They go in there, turn off the lights to take the picture. To this day, this is the only time I have ever heard my dad scream. Get her! He lets out a scream, and they both come running out of the room, and he says that something came at him in the flash. He saw something, doesn't know what he saw, but it came at him. So when the Polaroid is developed, you can see the bed, and there's two things in this picture that are odd. On the wall, there is a blue smudge.
I mean, it was crazy because normally you think orbs, there's the small ones, people it could be dust and everything. This was
and it wasn't round. It was an odd blob shape.
Blob shape, blue thing up against the wall.
And on the bed,
not
diagonally on the bed, is the imprint of somebody or a body. This imprint.
It was a perfect imprint
in the mattress, in the pillow of something laying down. And then later when we got the other photo developed, it kind of is a vague outline, there could be a person standing next to the bed. But over the years, it kind of faded away in the photo.
Yeah.
Now, I know I very easily have explained away all the other things that have happened. This one I do not have that much of an explanation for
funny too is that night we all ended up sleeping in our parents' bedroom because Jesse and I in our bedroom had woken up because I'd woken our sister up because we were sleeping in the same bed. The shadows in the room, we had one light on, and the shadows on the walls being casted from the one light in the bedroom started to shift around the room. Now, I mean, that might have just been like, I'm 9 years old. You guys just had your thing, and I'm freaking out now. But regardless, we all ended up sleeping on the floor in our parents' bedroom.
The nice donors to Make-A-Wish, their money was kind of wasted on 2 extra rooms that weren't used. So then the next day, I mean, we only stayed there, I think, the one night. We're getting ready to leave, and the guy that runs this castle is showing us around because he's being very nice. He knows this kid's there on a Make-A-Wish trip, so he's really pulling out all the stops. And we kind of tell him what's going on, like what happened, and he informs us that this castle is known for being haunted by a woman, the Green Lady, and that the story is that this woman fell down the stairs and died, but she was running away from one of the rooms for some reason. That room that she was running away from, room 19. Room 19 was the room that I was staying in. But it's a tourist thing. He could have said any room number.
Well, he also said that there was the little fairy kingdom thing near us too. Like, there's
a lot of stuff going on there that is questionable. It might have just been kind of built up. I mean, there was a cemetery also on site, but it's an old castle. So that one, a little harder to explain. I mean, again, the groaning pipes, overactive imagination, but we do have that photograph, but also it's a Polaroid. There could be defects in the film, so we can't definitively say that is an actual haunting or proof of a ghost.
Still spooky.
But yeah, that was that's just kind of all I can think of right now. But there was a lot more. There's a lot more stuff that had happened growing up in that house.
Could you explain the shadow people?
Not entirely. I mean, actually, most recent thing that happened was about a year ago. I was walking across the yard in the evening back to my house. I don't live in Spooky House now. I live in a different house on the property. That's also another spooky house. But I was walking across the yard. And, I walked through a shadow person, I guess you'd say, that was coming the opposite way from me. Like, we passed, through each other, and my brain just was like, nope, just keep on walking.
Just keep walking.
Just keep walking. Don't even acknowledge that. But there's all kinds of things. I mean, the human brain is an amazing thing that, think about it. When you do psychedelic drugs, and you trip out, like acid or mushrooms, your brain, a lot of those chemicals are already present in your brain to begin with. The drugs you're taking are just kind of activating them or making those receptors go crazy. But all the potential is still there. It's like a computer or a game system. All the stuff is in the processor. You just need to put the right disk in to make it run. What I'm saying is that maybe sometimes our brain just shorts out and creates things that aren't really there. I mean, there's lots of science to back up, infrasounds are these weird subharmonic frequencies that occur in nature, and they found in the laboratory that when you play these noises for people, they get anxious, they get nervous, and sometimes you will start to hallucinate. And this happens naturally in the world. There's places where, for example, several years ago, I was hiking through the mountains by Palm Springs, and there's a wind farm there, and for 3 hours straight I'm hiking through this canyon where the only sound you can hear is these spinning turbines making this sound, and it is deafening. It's the only thing you can hear, and you're out in this middle of nowhere desert box canyon. I started seeing things. I thought I was being followed on the trail. I was seeing people behind bushes. I was losing my mind, but it was just this infrasound.
Well, that's also now there's apps you can get to that it's it's a sound drug and stuff, and basically what that does is it's using some of those infrasounds mixed in with other higher octave sounds and stuff, and I mean, not necessarily just sound drugs, but there's some that are good for meditation that help you relax you. There's some that calm you. There's some I use sometimes to fall asleep. I'll listen to them, and it'll just there's some that bring on lucid dreaming where you can
so
experience
you
cool dreams.
You can hack the brain in crazy ways. In old buildings, you got a lot of cracks and stuff. Wind gets through, air currents, and so there's all this external stimuli that impact our brain or our body in ways we don't fully understand. Add to that a young age when you have a really hyperactive imagination. I mean, your brain is still developing at a young age. In fact, like the things that when kids get to a certain age, you start seeing monsters. Like you have this going on with your own child right now, right?
Yeah. He's 4 years old, and a little while back, I would say he'd see stuff in like the corners of the room.
Now, there is actually an evolutionary reason for why children start to see the monster in the closet or the boogeyman, and it's kind of a few things. One, the imagination part of their brain is starting to flip on. I mean, you probably see them play with things, but a lot of times they're playing with toys. They're just recreating things they've already seen, like in their favorite shows. Now they will start creating new scenarios and new situations, that they're starting to imagine new things. Evolutionarily, it's a protective measure to keep the young child from wandering into danger, because in the wild there's predators everywhere that are out there. So if your brain goes into this like hypersensitivity where you are seeing perceived threats, it's protecting you from straying too far from safety. Now we don't live in that situation. We're in these houses and cities and towns.
The brain's still
But the brain is still doing it. Your brain knows.
You might not have even noticed, but your brain did.
It's still doing the same thing. And so it sees the dark corners in the room or the shadows, and it's like, oh no, that's a predator. Like, you are in danger, because that's what it's still hardwired to do.
I got one more experience.
Okay, one more, and then we're going to wrap it up.
One more experience. So I used to house sit for our neighbors, lived at the bottom of our driveway, that actually owned the house that our grandfather...
The first house that
was on our property that our grandfather grew up in. And our great-grandfather had grown up in. So it's an older house than our big house or spooky house.
That's where the ladies buried.
And so I used to dog sit for them every so often on the weekends. And I would sleep in the guest bedroom, which was real cool because I had a Murphy bed.
Yes!
Like, there was more bedrooms I could have slept in, but I'm like, it's a fucking Murphy bed. I'm gonna sleep in the Murphy bed.
The Murphy bed.
Oh, yeah, which Murphy
live
bed?
Live out your Roger Rabbit dreams.
Right? Well, everyone knows I'm a huge Dick Tracy fan. That's why I got a smartwatch, so I can talk in it like Dick Tracy. So, for those of you that don't know what a Murphy bed is it's a bed that is made to look like a closet. So it folds up into the wall, and usually either has faux closet doors. On the closet doors you can actually open up and then drop the bed.
I think the one in Roger Rabbit in Eddie Valiant's house looks like filing cabinets.
Yeah, so like there's...
It always confused me as a kid. I was like watching, like, where do they go? Like, there's a bed back there. Where do the cabinets go?
So when you first walk in this room, you think it's got two closets. One of them pulls down into a bed, which is really cool. So I'm like, I'm not going to not sleep in this room.
Leaves so much room for activities.
The way it was kind of the room was set up was, you got the Murphy bed closet is the main bed on the main wall, and then directly to its right is another wall with the immediate closet to its right. And one night I was sleeping in there and stuff, and I remember waking up in the middle of the night, and the window on the opposite end of the wall, the moon, it was a full moon, was shining through the window just right where the light...
That's the most haunted moon!
Light hit the closet. Not to mention this house had a really creepy attic, like that was just a door in the top of the, like...
All attics are creepy.
Attics are the most creepy thing ever.
Monsters are under the bed, ghosts are in the attic. Everybody knows that.
Attics, I feel like, are arguably more creepier than basements. But,
basements have radon?
Yeah.
Closets... attics have, like, asbestos.
But, yeah, so anyways, the light's coming through this window, and it's shining just right where it's hitting this closet, and the closet's cracked open just a bit, and it's one of those, the doors that kind of accordion out, and close, open and close. And so it's shining through just right, and I see a face. And the face is looking straight at me. And part of me, again, is kind of like, am I tripping? Am I dreaming? Whatever. So I'm trying to wake myself up, and I'm like, I still see this effing face, staring at me, right? Creepy as hell. And so I don't want to move fast. I don't want to, if there's a person in my closet, I don't know what's in this closet. I don't want to move fast.
I mean, but at this point, you're already in the soup. There's no way this is going to end well.
Soup. I'm in the soup now. And I think I was 17 at the time. And so I'm slowly moving my hand to the light, to the lamp light, and I click it, turn it on. Big mistake, because, as soon as I turn that on, right, the rest of the room lights up, but the closet goes dark.
Uh-huh.
So now I'm like, crap, right? And then, being, I guess, the stupid guy, right? I don't run out of the house. I don't, I have to see.
We all watched the same movies growing up. We
In
all
the
know what you're
closet,
supposed to
right?
do.
And so, of course, I open up the closet, right? Boom, there's his face, right? It's a papier-mâché mask that their kids had made a long time ago that just happened to be in this, like, I don't they set it up on purpose. Like, that's real horrible, mean, and messed up. But, yeah, so it turned out there was a face.
There was some there.
It was just a papier-mâché mask, And then there's also the time I came there to find Hal from 2001: A Space Odyssey in the house.
Well, that's because they installed like a...
It was a wine cooler.
A wine cooler.
Yeah, the one weekend I go there, they're like, hey, we're getting a package. Can you bring it into the garage? Okay, it's a huge, ginormous box, bigger than me, like a refrigerator-sized box. Pull in there. Next weekend I come to visit. As soon as I open the door, first thing right there is this big black rectangular obelisk in the middle of the wall with a big, instead of a red, it was like a big blue dot. And it was like their wine cooler,
Welcome to the garage, Gunner.
Yeah.
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
Yeah. All right, well, I think that's going to do it for us this time. Thanks for humoring us, all you listeners out there. Like we said earlier, we're in El Paso right now, which is where my brother lives. I just happened to be in a situation where I could come out and visit him because I actually live 1,300 miles away, 3 states away, and we just happened to be close enough that we could take a 6-hour drive and spend some time with my brother. So it's not often that him and I get to hang out anymore and reminisce about our childhood growing up in a haunted house together. So once again, thanks for listening. We grew up in a haunted house, and you can too.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Like to join our jamboree, there's a simple rule that's compulsory.
Hurry back.
Rest in peace.
Be sure to bring your death certificate if you